once that document is finalized and adopted, I believe later this year. To me, the most exciting thing about improving our bus system, still on this slide, please, are the land use changes and redevelopment projects that are happening that directly support transit usage and walkability through higher densities and greater potential demand. In fact, many of the projects that were only in the planning stage as little as 3 years ago are already being built or in development. Your James Center North redevelopment project and form-based code were cited in this long-range plan update as well. Perhaps the most interesting topic we covered in this update were all the cool technological advances that are rapidly changing the way we communicate and get around. For example, autonomous or driverless vehicles that were only a concept in 2016 will be a reality within a few short years. Next slide, please. As I mentioned in the opening of the document or the presentation, the primary focus of this plan update, which one of our planners cleverly named a fiscally constrained vision, is to show exactly what service improvements we could offer if we were to go from the current 0.6% to the full 0.9% sales tax lien authority we're allowed in the Pierce County Public Transportation Benefit Area, or PTBA, and that's simply our service area. That system, including a few new fixed routes, another bus rapid transit, or a high capacity transit route, either the current 2 or 3, and especially much more frequent and reliable service are all shown in a menu of options, including the annual service hours and cost assumptions required for each. Some proposed examples of those are shown on this slide. It also helped to have new population and employment growth targets to cite as provided by the PSRC's Vision 2050 network for Pierce County in cooperation with our planning partners in Pierce County, who also sit on the regional staff committee at the PSRC, as do I. As in 2016, the PSRC modeled our new network for ridership, and those results and analysis are provided as Appendix B of this document. The key takeaway for me from their work was how our ridership could conceivably triple by 2040, especially given the Sound Transit 3 build out and interconnectedness of our proposed system expansion, both locally and regionally. Next slide. I include these maps to highlight the number of frequent routes proposed, including upgrading the current 2 serving University Place to either bus rapid transit or some sort of enhanced service. Anything that's in red is 10 to 15 minute service, and the red lines with the dashes in them are proposed bus rapid transit routes. Again, the current routes 2 or 3. As such, the agency is going to be looking into a system-wide study to determine where and when we want to start designing our next BRT routes and in what order. What's depicted here are the current routes 2 and 3 as BRT, as I mentioned, which continue to perform for us year after year and are both ideal candidates for an upgrade based on land use changes and infill development proposed in downtown Tacoma, University Place, and the city of Lakewood. Next slide, please. Another advantage that we didn't have 6 years ago when we began the inaugural long-range plan were all the web-based interaction tools now available. We chose the same tool Spokane Transit uses here to gather in public comments and suggestions, and it's called Social Pinpoint. A glimpse of the site's dashboard of what we've received so far is what's on this slide. The site also allows visitors to pin comments geographically throughout our service area, as well as extend or move existing fixed routes, add photos or images, and like or dislike others' comments. We still have a more basic text-only survey on our website too, and with it we've gathered over 300 comments so far. What we're hearing is very much what we heard back in 2016 and continue to hear year after year, and that's a demand for more frequent and reliable service, longer span of service such as early mornings and late nights, and expanded weekend service offerings. So really, the more things change, the more they stay the same, as the saying goes. Next slide. I apologize, I wasn't able to get our marketing group to update this image in time for tonight's presentation, but it should be available later on this week, and I could send it to Emelita to share with all of you. We'll post it on our website too. With all of us working remotely from mid-March until further notice, our timeline for adoption of this long-range plan update has been extended by 5 months as follows. The public review and comment period has now been extended through June 30th. We'll then present this information to our Board of Commissioners at their regular meeting of August 10th, including allowing the public to comment, assuming we're back to meeting and presenting in person by then, if not remotely, of course. Finally, we'll ask for their formal adoption of the Destination 2040 Long Range Plan update on September 14th at their regular meeting. we'd very much appreciate a formal comment letter from University Place if you'd like to submit one. And with that, are there any questions we can answer at this time about either current service or the future?
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Stavage.
My pleasure.
Are there any council comments at this time? Councilmember Figueroa still is not with us. Councilmember Keel.
Great. Great. Thank you, Mayor. Darren, thanks for the presentation.
My pleasure.
One of the things you touched on just slightly, and I was just hoping you can maybe elaborate or on it some more if staff has dug into it, because we've talked about it a little bit, and that is how, more directly, how the pandemic and the sales tax and all that kind of stuff is actually impacting planning. And you know, we're all feeling it, and if we're going to get some input and write a letter, you know, in this September timeframe, I think that's something we need to take into consideration.
That's a great point, Commissioner Keel, and it's, you know, there's really two scenarios going on right now. There's the reality, and there was our hope to grow. With the reality, I've got some data here that we got from our CEO recently. For May 2020, we were operating 395,000 service hours, so an over 20% cut right off the bat. We were forced to cut Sound Transit service by 15%. We're looking to slowly start to recover service over the next couple of months, and we will be doing a service change at the end of May. Specifically for University Place, the Route 2 will go back to weekday service with a normal weekday schedule, but the routes 52 and 53 will be operating on a Saturday schedule with a weekend span. So hourly only, but back to a weekday span, excuse me, of 6 a.m. to 10:45. So that service is still cut in half. This work didn't include or doesn't really touch on anything in the short term, as you know, and it's difficult for me because we weren't planning on this, and we were planning on moving forward and looking for the opportunity to go out to the voters ideally and ask for the full 0.9% taxing authority they were allowed. But everything changes for transit, as you know, not just for us, but worldwide. There's a very different look at transit and its viability. Obviously, it's needed and it is viable, but there's a lot of people that are scared of it, and I think a lot of people will hesitate to use it in the immediate future. And again, if you read the trades, that's not only happening here, but in London and New York and Chicago and everywhere else. So I know I'm kind of sad stepping your question because I don't know if I have an answer yet. It's something that staff's working on, the scheduling department's working on, that I think our board of commissioners and yourself will see very soon. Kind of what's the short-term recovery plan versus going into a long range, what I'm proposing.
Yeah. Thanks, Darren. If I can get the mic. Yeah, thank you. And no, you answered exactly like I thought you would, meaning we don't know, and we're still trying to figure it out, and everything that we had planned, you know, months ago now is changed. And so, and you're going to hear it first, and I'll certainly bring this to the commissioners meeting the next time we meet. And my request is that Pierce Transit staff, between now and September, when you're going to want input from cities, that we give them the best updated information that we have at the time, so that cities can make their input based on the new information, as opposed to what we thought we were going to do months ago, if that makes sense.
Yes. Unfortunately, you know, we're looking at staff reductions too, not only on the operating side, but on the planning side. And it's simply we just don't have the resources and the revenues to keep moving at the rate we were moving before. So it's unfortunate, but it is the reality. We have to take a hard look at what our staffing needs, both at the operator and maintenance level as well as at the administrative level, and it's not a pretty picture. So yeah.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Derek. Thank you, Mayor.
Oh, thank you. I did not see any other council members requesting a question. Oh, Council Member Stan Fleming.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And Darren, thank you for that presentation. That was really quite enlightening. I have two quick questions. One somewhat dovetails on Council Member Keel's question, but my first question is, with University Place looking at into the future having a greater density, I noticed that the proposal that we looked at this evening only talks about increasing the frequency of transit along the similar routes, where in other areas of the county you're adding additional routes. How does that balance for the growth of our community? And what is it meant by increasing the frequency of the routes?
Well, in the case of the current two, it would be upgraded to bus rapid transit, which is much more expensive than just adding a regular fixed route. What we put in the Puget Sound Regional Council's long-range plan when they updated it back in May of 2018 was something along the magnitude of $5 to $10 million a mile. So it's a permanent infrastructure investment that's, to our minds, is a lot more enticing to developers to look at versus just a new bus or a more frequent bus. So it's really, it operates like rubber-tired light rail, and it's been proven worldwide to foster redevelopment and give a sense of permanence if it's built. So to my mind, if I were in your shoes, I'd much rather see bus rapid transit or an enhanced bus than another bus. But the current routes that do serve the area will be increased. So going from a half hour to 20-minute headways or frequencies during the peak hour. So in other words, instead of 2 buses an hour, you'll get 3.
Okay.
But in the case of bus rapid transit, we think the 2 is definitely ripe for an enhanced service. A bus rapid transit, something a lot better than what we were offering today, just because the ridership continues to perform year after year. It's I don't know if it's a coincidence or it's strange, but our 1 is our best, our 2 is our second best, and our 3 is our third best as far as ridership goes and boardings.
Okay, awesome. The second part of my question is, with this unexpected COVID pandemic that we're all coping with at the present time, obviously when you read the latest statistics and the impact it's had on public transportation, what is the fiscal impact on the future proposal that you gave us tonight, and how is that being mitigated?
Yeah, I think it's on hold. I think Commissioner Keel could speak to it better than I could. We're not really in a position, we don't think at this point, to go out and ask the public for more sales tax revenue to support transit. I don't think it's I don't think it's in the pipeline right now like it was before COVID-19 hit. I think if it hadn't, I think we would have been in a great position to go out and ask the voters in the November general election. But I don't believe in, and please chime in, Commissioner Keel, I don't think we're going to at this point. We just don't think the time is right.
So would that mean that what you gave, the proposal you've given us tonight, is going to be pushed out a little bit?
Yes, it would either be pushed out, or what we could do is we could do it in stages. It doesn't necessarily have to be the whole enchilada, as the saying goes. We do have different scenarios. We have a 7/10 as well as an 8/10 scenario that are in the appendices of the plan. So the nice thing about rubber-tired buses is that you can do it incrementally. So it doesn't have to be all or nothing at all. So we could certainly look at it as funding becomes available.
Right, great, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Councilmember Lee, Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, you had a question.
Yes, I want to thank you for the presentation. It was very informative. Actually, Councilmember Fleming's question was sort of along the same lines as mine, so I'll just thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Stavage.
My pleasure.
Appreciate your presentation, and you did a great job. So thank you very much. And I do hope that our citizens do pay particular attention to the 2040 plan and do provide input, as Route 2 runs right through University Place and does have a direct impact on our citizens. So I encourage our citizens to to get in touch and get educated on the plan. So,
thank you.
Thank you. Our next item on the agenda is public comment. As of 5:30 this evening, we have received no public comment via email. So there's nothing in your inbox that you should have been reading. Our next item is the consent agenda. May I call for a motion to approve or amend the consent agenda?
This is Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, and I move approval of tonight's consent agenda.
Do I have a second?
Councilmember Keel, I second.
Okay. I have a first and a second. Are there any objections to approving the consent agenda as submitted? Not hearing or seeing any, I will, the consent agenda is approved as submitted. Thank you very much. Our next item on the agenda is our public hearing, our 6-year transportation improvement plan for the years 2021 to 2026. We did have a study session on this item at our last meeting, but this is our required public hearing for this improvement plan. And with that, I will turn this over to Jack Eklund, our chief engineer, for presentation. Did Jack leave the meeting? I thought he was here earlier. Do we not have him here? Okay, at this time, due to technical issues, we will suspend this item until, and hope that after our council, city manager and council comments, that we might be able to reconnect with Mr. Eklund so that we can have the required public hearing. So with that, I will move to the city manager report. Mr. Sugg.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council, and those that are watching this program from wherever they are tonight. Good news, our Planning Commission will be reconvening again. They'll be meeting for the first time since the governor's Stay Home, Stay Healthy, Stay Safe proclamation. The meeting will be held this Wednesday, May 20th at 7 p.m. The meeting will be virtual and public participation will be in the same manner as council meetings. They will be discussing the form-based code, so they'll be picking up on the topic that they left off with at their last meeting on February 5th. So we're excited that the Planning Commission is going to be able to get back into it and do this important work and ultimately make some recommendations at some point to the council so the council can take up the matter of form-based code. So that meeting will be happening this Wednesday. And then I just wanted to make just a couple statements. As you all know, as the community knows, we're in what the governor has claimed as proclaimed as the Safe Start, a 4-phased approach to reopening the state of Washington. And our city, along with other cities and counties across the state, are relying on the State Department of Health and local public health officials who are monitoring data to assess the state's readiness for safely reopening and then modifying those physical distancing measures. Right now, we're in the most extreme and severe case, which is phase 1, the most restrictive. And we'll be in that for at least 3 weeks. Now, this was the Safe Start program that the governor announced on May 4th, started officially on May 5th. So we are in that period. We're still in that first 3-week period, and there's no guarantee that it will be that at the end of 3 weeks that it will move on to the next phase, the phase 2, which allows for a gradual reopening of various things. Again, it's a 4-phase program to fully reopen Washington. We're in phase 1. No phase will last less than 3 weeks before moving to the next phase. In order to complete one And the 3 weeks. So that was interesting. If you go to the governor's website, and we've got a link on our own city website, our COVID-19 page. Why 3 weeks before moving to the next phase? Well, that's in order to allow one complete disease incubation period, plus an additional week to compile data and confirm trends. Again, this is data driven. It's being driven by the state health department and local health authorities. So I just wanted to let the community know and that we will be following the advice of the State Department of Health and our local health officials who are implementing this 4-phased approach to reopening Washington. So that's my report, Mayor.
Well, thank you, Mr. Sugg. At this time, we are open for council comments. I understand we still have not been able to connect with Council Member Figueroa, so the next person on the list is Council Member Keel. Do you have a comment at this time?
Yes, Mayor, I do. Thank you, Mayor, for the space. I just want to continue to thank staff for the work that is being done around the pandemic and all the stuff that you're doing around to keep citizens informed and safe. I think that is paramount work that you're doing right now, and so I certainly appreciate it. The other thing that I want to just let my fellow council members know that in the next few weeks, I'm really thinking about a way that I can offer some type of legislative proposal or some thought, begin a conversation to where we can actually start a more in-depth conversation with the public around public safety. It's something that we have been talking about around a lot. I know, Mayor, you started your chats with people, coffee chats, I can't remember what you call them, but I know that with the pandemic that got a little bit put on hold or interrupted in some kind of way. And so my interest really is to have some type of concerted effort where we're engaging with people, gathering information, and moving things along. Now, again, I know that we have been doing that, kind of, independently of each other. But I think I like to have that conversation, kind of as a council, and some conversation that where the public actually sees and knows and can put their finger on conversations that we as a council are having around that topic. I think that in the long term is going to help us, get to a solution. And so that's what I'm hoping to propose in the next couple of weeks. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Keel. At this time, Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, do you have any comments?
Yes, I do. Councilmember Pro Tem Lee. For those of you who did not know it, the Tacoma landfill has ceased taking non-resident trash and garbage. I don't know how long it's been that way. It's been at least a week or two. This morning, I was proudly say I was the second person to use the UP Refuge transfer the dump. UP Refuge is taking our trash and garbage. It's on a load basis, not on a weight. So I had a pickup truck, a full load of trash, and they came up with a fee. I dumped it there at the UP Refuge office, and it beats going out to Purdy or driving to Puyallup to use the Pierce County dump. So this is something that started today, that the UP Refuge opens at 8:30, and I believe it stays open till around 4 to 4:30. So if you have trash and garbage that doesn't fit in your garbage can, it can be taken there and for a fee can be dropped off. I hope that this will decrease the amount of illegal dumping that we're seeing in our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Pro Tem Lee. Councilmember McCluskey, do you have any comments at this time?
Yes. Thank you, Mayor. Well, I'm happy to report that Northwest Track this weekend has opened for what they call wild drives. So the wild drives, they have about 180 slots, so vehicles can use the tram roadway and go through the track and see the animals. The animals are excited to see people back and a little more life on the roads as well. So their behavior has been improved by this. But you have to reserve your slot online prior to going to track. They have 180 slots per day going, and last weekend 153 slots were taken. They expect that this weekend they're going to be maxed out before the weekend hits. So I would suggest that you reserve in advance before you go. They're also talking about soon, maybe in June or so, to open Trek up in a phased flow approach. So there's one-way traffic going through the track with limited attendance. The restrooms will be open and there will be attendants there to sanitize, and there also will be criteria and behavior protocols for the guests to adhere to as well. So anyway, that's heading in the positive direction so far, and let's hope that continues to go. So that's the end of my report, Mayor. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilmember McCluskey. Councilmember Fleming, do you have any comments at this time?
I do, Madam Mayor, and thank you. I know I've made these comments privately, but I wanted to share them publicly and also with the council. And that is, recently, one of our facilities in University Place had an emergency need for PPE, and they contacted the city asking for some dire help. And I really want to extend a kudos to our city manager and to Lisa Batorik, who literally within hours was able to respond to that emergency and really put to rest an issue that could have been a lot worse than what it turned out to be. So, thanks to both those folks and the rest of the city staff who really stepped it up at a time they needed it. So, kudos.
Thank you, Councilmember Fleming. Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, do you have a comment at this time?
Mayor Bellisi, I do. Yes, a couple of things I wanted to touch on, one of which is just a reminder that it's still the census period. This is the once every 10-year period of time when we get to be counted. And folks, if you haven't done that, take a moment to do it. It's keenly important to that we get an accurate count, a full count here in University Place. It has a lot of implications in how government does its business, and it only takes a moment. So if we could all participate in that, that would be great, and that would help us move forward and keep things accurate in our planning efforts as well. Speaking of planning efforts, the Vision 2040 subcommittee has continued to do its work, as we've mentioned. Council members McCluskey and Keel are on that committee with me. We have a meeting later on this week. And in that meeting, we're going to be deciding on which items the committee is referring on to council. You'll get the full list of all of the legislative proposals or the legislative ideas, I should say, that have been commented on from our flash vote information. There's approximately 300, so it's quite a bit to take a look at. But we've done some things to organize that for you, council members, and to group them and be able to see which ones are receiving a recommendation from the committee for referral. I would hope that in the upcoming agendas, we'll find some time to talk about that as a group. And certainly one of the items we're likely to talk about, I believe, is over public safety. It is right towards the top, and if not the top item in terms of frequency. So that may be a chance to combine that conversation that Councilmember Keel's talking about, and also our Vision 2040 efforts as we move forward with it. And I do also want to thank the staff and our public safety folks. It's a challenging time. Certainly, we never quite know what one day is going to bring and what the next one will have following it. But everybody's been moving together with that, and I think the city is being well served from that. At least they are in my mind. With that, I think that's my comments for tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Worthington. I do have some news to share with not only our council members, but with the city, with the citizenry as a whole. I don't know how many of you are aware that the Forever Friends statue has finally been installed in its home base at the current apple orchard. It was installed last week, and it looks absolutely fabulous. But unfortunately, due to COVID-19, the Up for Art group has not been able to organize an unveiling or a ceremony to commemorate the installation. But it is at the orchard. It is available for photos and just to go take a look at it. So I would encourage any of you that haven't seen it before, or even seen the mock-ups of it, to venture out on these lovely nice days and take a stroll of the current apple orchard and see the Forever Friends statue. It was definitely a wonderful surprise when I went to go see it on last week. I believe it was Wednesday evening. I would also like to encourage our citizens, as the weather gets nicer, there is the tendency to want to get out of our houses and to congregate in large groups, but I'd like to caution everyone to remember the social distancing and the fact that our governor still hasn't released us for large group congregations. And so please, when you do go for your picnics or go for your walks or your outings in our parks, to please observe your social distancing and ensure that you keep your crowds under with your immediate family, so that we can ensure that hopefully while we still have good weather, we will be allowed to congregate in larger groups and not give reason or rise to our elected officials and to our governor to further this stay that we are currently under. And with that, that's all the comments I have at this time. I have noticed that Jack Eklund is here and he is online, so we are going to go back to our original public hearing for the 6-year transportation improvement plan, and we're looking for a presentation from Mr. Eklund. So with that, I will turn over the meeting to Mr. Eklund.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and City Council. Well, so tonight we have our public hearing for our 6-year transportation improvement plan. With our plan, it is the annual update to this 6-year transportation improvement plan. It's for the years 2021 through 2026. We are required by state law to adopt and annually update this plan. This year's update, we have only a few minor changes to it. The first is we have added we've split out a project. This, it's Chambers Creek Road Roundabout. This is project 7 on the project list. This previously was part of the overall Chambers Creek Road improvement project, and we've now split that off into a separate project in case additional grant funding becomes available for us to take advantage of. Another project that we've added to the list, or split out actually, is the 31st Street Parkway Lemons Beach Road project. That one we've now split into 2 phases on each side of the road. Also doing that for grant purposes if we have a funding that would be available for that. And then finally, we've updated the various costs and schedules for these projects. Now, adopting a 6-year transportation improvement plan does not encumber any expenditures on our part, and rather those would happen during each annual budget cycle. However, it does give residents and adjacent jurisdictions the ideas of our transportation planning needs, as well as makes us eligible for certain grant sources. We did receive one public comment on the 6-year tip. It is from Tony Paulson, and his comment were related to his support for the Chambers Creek Road Roundabout project. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Eklund, for your presentation. At this time, we are in the council comment or clarification portion of the meeting. So I will go using the seating chart. We'll go through the council members, see if you have any additional clarifying questions at this time. Council member Figueroa is still not in attendance. So Council member Keel, do you have any clarifying questions? You're muted, sir.
I am. The mute button is my friend. No, Mayor, I don't have any clarifying questions. Thank you.
Council member Pro Tem Lee.
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, I have no questions. Thank you.
Council member McCluskey.
Councilmember McCluskey, I do not have any clarifying questions at this time, but glad that you're piecing out some of these projects so that hopefully we'll get the grants sooner than later if we have the smaller chunks of funding for some of those very important and strategic opportunities, especially the T intersection at Chambers Bay. Be excited to get a roundabout there. So thank you for your efforts and time on that. Thank you, Mayor.
Council member Fleming. You're muted, sir. There you go.
There we go. All these buttons down here. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Jack, I just want to say, and I've said this before, I'll say it again, thanks for continuing to dog those projects. I like the idea of the carve out so we can move some of those forward as funding does become available. Just keep up the great work and move forward. So thanks.
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington.
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, I don't have any questions. Our study sessions have answered my information there.
Well, thank you, council members. At this time, I have no additional questions. I want to thank you for your thoughtful presentation at our study session last meeting, as well as addressing the concerns of the citizenry and of the public comment that we received. Thank you for acknowledging that this evening. Are there any additional questions that council has or comments that they want to make before we go into consideration? I would, sorry, rules of order here. I would like a motion for consideration of the 6-year transportation improvement plan.
This is Mayor Pro Tem Worthington. And I move that we approve the 6-year transportation plan for the years 2021 through 2026.
Okay, do I have a second?
Councilmember Keel, I second the motion.
I have a first and a second for consideration of this of the transportation plan. Do we have any additional comments that council would like to make at this time? Okay, no raising hands. Okay, with that, I will ask our clerk to conduct a roll call vote on this issue.
Councilmember Figueroa. Councilmember Keel. Councilmember Keel.
There we go. Councilmember Keel votes aye.
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee. Councilmember Pro Tem Lee.
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, aye.
Councilmember McCluskey.
Aye.
Councilmember Fleming.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington.
Aye.
And Mayor Belisi.
Aye.
The motion passes, Mayor.
Thank you very much. At this time, we are going into our study session where our next item on the agenda is our Affordable Housing Local Revenue Sharing Ordinance. Our attorney, Matt Kaiser, will be providing us with our study material for this evening. Mr. Kaiser.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. Matt Kaiser, City Attorney. Tonight, we're going to be talking about affordable housing. This is a conversation that this council has had before earlier this year when council took up prior legislation on this. And I think the way to best think about this is sort of a dance in 3 parts. Kind of set the dance floor stage for you a little bit. In 2019, the Washington legislature passed legislation that allows local governments to divert a portion of the sales tax stream that would otherwise go to the state and keep it local for affordable housing purposes. And council already took the first of those dance steps. Part of that legislation, the first legislative step, if you will, requires that council within 6 months of the passage of that legislation adopt a resolution of intent to say, yes, we're going to go forth and this is something that we are interested in. Council did that back in January. Tonight, coming before you on what is ultimately the second step of that, which is to actually pass the legislation that would do that. And I will talk a little bit more about that later. And then the third step, which is a step that council doesn't have to complete all the answers to for tonight, and likely won't be coming up with all the answers for tonight, will be how do we spend the money? What can we use it? Well, there's the what can we use it for, and how do we end up spending the money? So I want to talk a little bit about what the tax is and what we can use it for. And there's, at the end of the day, there's 2 taxes or 2 tax rates. And when we talked about this back in January, there are a certain qualifying local taxes that if council had wanted to pass them would effectively double the effective tax rate in addition to the underlying tax. Those include affordable housing levies, sales taxes for housing related services, sales taxes for chemical dependency, and a levy for affordable housing. Council had not expressed an interest in that. This proposed legislation is written as though council continues to adhere to that. So what can you ultimately use it for at the end of the day? What you're using it for is for affordable housing purposes. That's pretty broad. So, and recognize that the legislative language is pretty broad, so it grants you some degree of flexibility. What that allows you to do is to acquire, rehabilitate, construct affordable housing, including new structures as allowed by law. You can fund the operations and maintenance of new units of affordable housing. You can also provide rental assistance to tenants who are at or below 60% of the median household income of the city. So if you're interested in doing this, what do you have to do? Within 1 year of the passage of the underlying state legislation, which puts us towards the end of June, council has passed the legislation. A draft of that legislation is before you in your council's packet tonight. What this does is, in two broad strokes, is that it imposes that tax. The tax itself serves as a credit against the share of the sales tax that would otherwise be going to the state. Very similar to what we have right now with the LRF monies that we're using for the downtown core. It's not a net increase in a tax at point of sale on consumers. They end up paying the same. It's just a portion of that tax that would have gone to Olympia stays local. And then at some point, the council will need to discuss how would you like to spend it. When we talked about this back in January, council did not reach a consensus on this particular issue. But what I thought, with one exception, I suppose. But what I thought I heard were three clear ideas kind of coming through. And all of them are generally acceptable. One was, let's essentially stockpile the money, hold on to it until we can formulate a plan. You can do that. The second is to recognize that the amount of money that we would likely receive on an annual basis under these funds do become difficult to administer. Under the state passage of the legislation and the figures, our maximum share of this it's estimated to be on an annual basis somewhere in the $23,000 to $25,000 range. So that doesn't leave a lot of money that's out there to tackle what is a very large problem, but that's available. We do have a model where we have other incomes that would otherwise be coming into the city in the form of surcharges on recording fees that we do have administered by Pierce County. And we talked about that as one of the options. Do we want to enter into an agreement with an outside agency to administer this, whether it's Pierce County, another governmental agency, or the like? So those options are on the table. And then finally, there is the option of not passing this. When we were discussing this back in January, that was not something that we were generally hearing from the council, but that is out there, that is available if you so choose. So tonight, it is set for study. If there's any additional questions from council on the affordable housing revenues, we're happy to answer them, but recognize that we are on a time issue. That if this is something that council is interested in doing, we will require passage of this corresponding legislation in the next in one of the June council meetings. So with that, I'm happy to yield the floor and submit to any questions that council may have.
Thank you, Mr. Kaiser. At this time, we are opening it up for council questions or comments. Councilmember Keel.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks, Matt, for your presentation. And it gets better every time I hear it. I just want to make sure that I understand, and I also want to underscore this for the public. And Mayor, I'm hoping that somehow, if we end up doing this, that we make this point very clear to people. And my question is, we are not raising taxes. Is that correct?
That is a correct statement.
Okay. So, and I knew that to be true. I just wanted to make sure I understood that and got that real clear. And the second thing that that I understand what we're doing is that the same tax that people are already paying that goes to the state, if we enact this, we get to keep some of that locally and not send it to the state.
That's also correct, up to the statutory limit, which is about 25K annual. But yes.
Great, thank you. So all of that sounds lovely to me. I mean, because I think the state taxes us too much, and they keep too much of what they should be given to cities already, you know, when they go through and sweep funds. So I don't I don't see any downside to this at all whatsoever in my mind. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome. Council Member Pro Tem Lee, do you have any comments?
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee. Yes, I concur with Councilmember Keel. We have not passing this isn't an option. And so I concur with his comments, and I really don't have anything to add to that. Thank you.
Council Member McCluskey, do you have comments?
Yes, I do. Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. I concur with Councilmember Keel wholeheartedly, even if it's a penny or two, because after all, this is kind of a sentence. I'd rather it stay locally for local control. I'm all about local control. And the bigger picture, though, over 20 years, it's a little over $500,000. So, you know, cumulatively, even though it's really small amount every year, you know, it ends up not really a windfall, but, you know, it's better than giving it back up to the state. So I'm excited, and I will definitely be for it, and also look forward to our conversation with the council as to how to expend it. I do have a question onto, I know the accountability will be through the audit process through the state. Is there a you know, a Cinderella date timeline that we have to expend the money after the 20 years?
I haven't seen one in the underlying legislation. However, that is not to say that the state might come out and start manufacturing some pumpkins and bringing that whole, you know, keeping with the reference.
Okay.
So.
All righty. Well, thank you. That's all my comments and questions. Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome. Okay, Councilmember Fleming.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Matt, for the presentation. I likewise join Councilmember Keel in his comments. They're very spot on. I think any monies generated local should stay local and not be swept back to the state. So to underscore what he has said, it's not for citizens who are listening, not a new tax, not an increase in tax, but it's an opportunity to keep the taxes are already paying local. So I'm all in favor for this one. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington.
Thank you, Mayor Berlisi. Yeah, a couple of comments. So certainly right in line with the rest of the council members, this is an opportunity for us to recapture some state money essentially and focus it on our community. And we should do that. The question just gets to be how do we focus it? What are the projects that we use it on? And how do we make those decisions? And we're capable of working through that. I do want to say that I'm going to be careful that whatever approach we use, we try not to spend much of anything on the administrative side of it. $25,000 a year, if it's even that much, in itself can disappear relatively quickly. And admittedly, over 20 years, it's $500,000, and that's maybe one good project. Or maybe there's something else to be done with it. As council probably recalls, last meeting we accepted a grant application with the state of Washington to complete an update on our comprehensive plan housing element. That could be an opportunity for us to look and see what some of our issues are in housing. Do our residents need help in rental assistance? Perhaps it's more about helping them repair their homes so that they're in good stead in low-income families, for example. Or perhaps it's another issue we just don't know about yet. So as we work on that comprehensive plan update, this could be a subset of some of that work. I mean, we don't have to wait for the whole plan to be done, perhaps, but it will be a chance for us to get the information and give us a sense of direction on where we want to go with this. So all for moving forward, We want to do that before the end of June, and then we can decide down the road how to use it. And let's just be careful not to spend too much of it on it, if any of it, on administrative costs. So, thank you.
Thank you, council members. Most of what was being said this evening regarding this issue, I'm in concurrence with. I do think that we do need to keep the funds locally, whether we decide to help our citizens with rental assistance, or whether we look at a potential unknown need that we have in doing an affordable housing project or whatever. But I think it's a win situation for us in that it's not increasing our citizens' taxes that they are currently paying, but it has great benefit in being able to make a difference in our community. So I look forward to a conversation here in the future. And as Mayor Pro Tem said, we are having a housing study done, so it'll be interesting to see what kind of an impact a starting project could have with 25,000, or if we need to wait a few years to have a significant fund balance in there to make a project pencil out for our community, or if the needs are more in the rental assistance category, being able to allocate the funds to that. So I think we have given our attorney some direction based on our comments as to where the next point of action is on this particular item. So thank you, everybody, for your comments. Our next two items are legislative proposals, but the proponent, Councilmember Figueroa, has been in contact to indicate that he had an emergency at home that has prevented him from attending the meeting this evening. And given that he is the primary proponent of these two legislative proposals, and more than likely we will have to restudy these issues, I would like to propose that we forego the discussion on these two issues this evening. And can I get a motion and a second if there's a concurrence from council members to do so?
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, and I move that we table this item until such time as Councilmember Figueroa is available to present it to us.
Thank you, Councilmember Worthington. Do I have a second?
I'm the second on that one.
Okay, so I have a first and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye unanimously.
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Okay, I have 5 ayes and 1 nay. So at this time we are done with our meeting, and I will therefore call the meeting adjourned. Thank you very much.
Are we all good?